Good evening. I'm Alan Jones, Mayor of Winston-Salem. It's my honor to call to order the October 17th meeting of the Winston-Salem City Council and ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Larson.
Present.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Mundy.
Present.
Councilmember Scipio.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Here.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Thank you very much. Would you please join the city council and me in a moment of silence? Thank you very much. And would you join the city council and me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Our Sergeant at Arms tonight is Lieutenant T.R. Wiley. Lieutenant, thank you for being with us. I believe it's your first time with us, and we welcome you. We have two items before we get into the regular agenda. We have an honorarium, and I'd ask the city clerk to read that. H1, please.
Item H1, Proclamation declaring Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2022. Whereas domestic violence is a pattern of coercion in intimate relationships where one person uses violence to gain power and control over a partner and/or other family members. And whereas domestic violence is a crime that violates the individual's dignity, humanity, privacy, and security through systematic control and abuse. And whereas domestic violence may include emotional, mental, physical, sexual, financial, or psychological abuse and/or violence. And whereas people of all ages, races, religious affiliations, sexual orientations, and socioeconomic backgrounds are vulnerable to domestic abuse. And whereas according to the Centers of Disease Control, nearly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men in the United States have experienced contact sexual violence, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetimes. And whereas the City of Winston-Salem is committed to taking a firm position against domestic violence and will remain focused on ensuring that all people are safe in their homes and that abusers are held accountable for their crimes. And whereas with many agencies, departments, and survivors working together to promote awareness, including through the Bridges to Hope Family Justice Center of Forsyth County, we can protect the vulnerable, stop the violence, restore hope, and make our community safer for everyone. Now, therefore, I, J. Allen Joines, Mayor of the City of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, do proclaim October 2022 to be National Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Winston-Salem and encourage all residents to show support for survivors of domestic violence and to actively participate in efforts to end violence in their homes, schools, and communities. Given under my hand and seal the 17th day of October 2022.
Thank you. Dr. J. Nelson Weaver is here to accept this. We certainly thank you for the work that you're doing and work with Family Services and others to bring shine the light on this dark area of our society. And thank you for your hard work. And I would present to you, and if you'd like to say a word.
Thank you very much, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, all city council members, and residents of the community. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you for just a moment this evening. Family Services is one of the lead agencies in town that responds to survivors when they're in a domestic violence incident. We served over 170 guests in our domestic violence shelter in the last year and over 1,500 community members through the Bridges to Hope Family Justice Center, people seeking safety. 2 of our key partners are Winston-Salem Police Department, who respond to calls every single day. Never knowing what they're going to find when they show up. Often the domestic violence related call is one of the more serious calls that they get, and they show up every single day, call after call after call, to serve our community and to serve survivors. So we greatly appreciate Winston-Salem PD. We also serve in partnership with the Continuum of Care and place survivors in safe housing through the Rapid Rehousing Program. So the city is a key partner with us, and we appreciate the opportunity to work in collaboration with various members of the city, sworn and unsworn, and victim advocates to really try to help people get to safety, because that's what we all want to accomplish every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver.
Thanks.
We're very fortunate tonight to have with us the superintendent of the Winston-Salem County Schools, Dr. Tricia McManus, is going to give us an update on good things that are going on there. So, Dr. McManus.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and all of our council members. This is my first time presenting in front of you all, so thank you for letting me be here. It's a packed agenda, so I'll go as quickly as possible. I really am here tonight, and I'm with some of my colleagues. I have Brent Campbell, our Chief Communications Officer. Andrew Kraft is our Chief Accountability Officer, and one of our board members, Alex Bohannon, in the audience this evening as well. This is a very quick update. I do a quarterly update to the county, and I thought it might be nice to get out to our different municipalities around the county and city and do a quick update about where we are. I mean, we've been through a lot in the last 2 years, just as all of you have, and everyone in our community. And so just to give you a sense of where we are with our data, and also what are some of the interventions and initiatives that we're doing as a school district. We appreciate your partnership. So I'm going to go quickly through these slides. You're going to probably say, I wish that you had longer, but I will make sure you all get this deck so you can examine it later. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And so basically, everything we do is rooted in our mission and vision. I'm not going to get into that. Other than those 3 bold words at the bottom, excellence, collaboration, and inclusiveness are driving what we're doing every day. And also 5 strategic plan goals. And you can see those on the slide related to, honestly, achievement, closing achievement gaps, building strong partnerships with our families and community, including all of you, are retaining a highly diverse workforce, and then also fostering an inclusive climate. Those are our strategic plan goals. And so I'm just going to share a few data points with you about how we're doing right now. And so just so you know, all of you have probably heard about our 90 by 25 initiative to have 90% of our 3rd graders reading on grade level by 2025. We have an 8th grade strategy, that 8th grade goal for that same area, and 90% graduation rate goal. So we've got, it's 2022, we've got 3 years to reach these very aggressive and rigorous goals, but we have a good plan in place to get there. This is our student demographic makeup. So one of our celebrations that we have an amazing, diverse community, and this shows you our breakdown of our students for a total of about 53,000. So reading, I'm gonna go over a few different points, since reading is one of our big rocks right now. 3rd grade literacy, 90 by 2025. If you see where we're trying to get, the dotted lines are that 90%. And what you're going to notice on here is that we've taken some dips since the pandemic, but this year we've actually increased in some of those areas. So before the pandemic was the 2018-19 data, and then you're gonna see in 2019-20 there was no data. In 2020-21, that was last school year, and although we were back in school in person, last year was a year of a great deal of exclusions, and so it was a challenging year. But that was last school year. But we still, during that year, made improvements in the 2021-22 data. Something to celebrate, because this slide, in addition to this slide, 75% of our schools met or exceeded growth at the end of last school year. So even though we were facing some of the challenges around staffing and around absences, we still had 75% met or exceeded growth. And 4 of our schools in our Inspire 340 network actually came off the low-performing state list last year. Those were Easton, Ibraham, Old Town, and Petrie. All of those schools exceeded growth and actually came off the list. So although this data we have a long way to go from 40%, and if you break it down by Black and Hispanic students, we have an achievement gap you're going to see on all these slides that we are addressing. It is a priority for us in our school district, and you will see goals around every one of these areas. These are other results from all, and then based on our students, our EL students. So those are our second language learners, and also our students with disabilities. These slides show that we have a gap there between those students also and our other students. Here are some highlights. These are schools that had the largest increases, some of the largest in 3rd grade reading: the Downtown School, Kimmel Farm, Woldward, and Spies. And you can see in some of those, they exceeded pre-pandemic scores, which is really incredible during the challenges that we have faced in the past few years. If you look at 8th grade reading, you're going to see the same thing. We are working toward 90%, but you can see 8th grade reading, we are in the same boat, where we are about 63% of our white students are making the mark. It's about 39.8% all, and then you can see our Black and Hispanic students. And so all of our data, we break down racial demographic groups so that we can actually make very specific targeted goals for improvement. And then these schools actually had the largest changes in reading. Winston-Salem Prep had an 8% increase, and the downtown school, again, had a 6% increase, with Prep actually beating their pre-pandemic scores. Graduation rate, you can see we've pretty much stayed close to where it's been in the past few years. So we didn't take a big dip in graduation rate, but we are still trying to get to that 90%. So you can see we're at about right now 85.4%. Reading across all grade levels, you can see again, now this is grade 3 through 8. So if you can see something to notice, we took a dip. If you look at 2018-19, our next, that was pre-pandemic, our next scores were 2021. So that was the pandemic year, and then last school year, we went up. So what this is showing is we are starting to recover. Our scores are moving back in the upward direction, which is what we want. So you can see 60 to 63, 24 to 25, again, starting to move up through recovery efforts. And then Cook Elementary had an 8 percentage point increase in grades 2 through 5, and Old Richmond an 8 percentage increase. Continuing to go, I'm going to go a little bit faster at this point. ELA, you can see this, and this is in our high school ELA scores, and you can again see where we are with all students and broken down by our subgroup. And you can see math, same. What I want you to notice here is that dip went down, it dipped, and now it's going back up. So math grades 3 through 8, we were at 53.8. Last year we bumped up to 64.3, so we're back on that track toward recovery. Not yet to the 75.7, but we're on that path. And that is same for our subgroups. You can see our subgroup, our demographic groups have also made those increases. Even though there's still a gap, we're moving in the right direction. And so here are schools with the largest grade 3 through 8 math scores. The largest gains, we had Louisville, Old Richmond, Cook, and Ibraham. Ibraham was 23 percentage point increase, which was 12 points above their pre-pandemic scores. Here are math EOC over time, so that's math 1. And so again, you can see the movement in the upward direction, although our scores, I will say, are not where we want them to be. And so one of the challenges that we have, but we are working very hard to overcome those challenges, is around staffing in some of our critical areas of math and science. So we are really trying to think out of the box to get our students great instruction. And that is from honestly working with international teachers to working with retired teachers, bringing them back, to pairing teachers in innovative ways. I mean, whatever it takes to make sure our students are getting that high quality math instruction is what we're trying to do this school year. If you look for math, you can see that Reagan, Mount Tabor, East, Atkins, Parkland, and Reynolds all had significant increases in their scores. Science, you can see the whole, again, we're moving back up to 81.9%, 47.4%, we're above last year's scores. And then you can see schools that did great. Cook Elementary, something to celebrate, 44% increase in science last school year. Kimberly Park, 33% increase. Moore, Sedge Garden, Union Cross, all had significant increases in Easton and Conoke. What's very exciting about these, many of these schools are in our Inspire 340 network. Many of these schools, the majority of these that are making these great growth, are also in our city. They are city schools. So that's exciting for us. Schools with the largest changes in science that you also saw were J.F. Kennedy, East Forsyth Middle, and Prep, again, with some large percent increases, and also Mineral Springs Middle. Biology, you can see over time, biology is also moving up, but it took the dip as well. And here are schools with the largest increases in biology. We have Carver High School with a 26% increase, Walkertown High School, West Forsyth, Mount Tabor, and Parkland. All of those schools had the largest increases in biology. And ACT, if you look at our ACT scores, the state changed or the UNC system, not the state, the UNC system changed the minimum score from 17 to 19. So if you look in 2021, we were at 50. If it was still 17, we would be at 50.8, so we would not have taken a dip. But now with the score moving up to 19, we're at a 39.2. So we've got work to do now to raise the bar for our children around, our students around the ACT. So how are we going to do all that? That was all the data in a nutshell. Again, you'll have the PowerPoint if you want to dig into it, and I'll be happy to share anything more. But it's through our 90 by 25 initiative, so starting with literacy. We have new books in the hands of all of our students, new classroom libraries. We have literacy coaches in our schools that have the furthest to go to get to that 90%. We've got all of our teachers trained in the science of reading. We've got foundations program. We're seeing a lot of growth in the area of literacy as far as implementation is concerned. And we've got our Reading Warriors program, which many of our community members are part of, where they are actually tutoring in our schools every day. And then climate and culture. We're also focusing on this. If our students are not in school and do not feel connected and included, they're not going to thrive academically. And so we're spending a lot of time. We have rewritten our code of conduct, character, and support, which is really about supporting our students in a more inclusive culture versus an exclusionary culture, and looking for solutions versus punitive consequences, looking for true solutions that teach students when they do make mistakes. We've got graduation coaches in all of our high schools. We've added 30 more social workers. Some of this was possible with ESSER. I know you all are using your ESSER funds in different ways, so are we. A lot of that has been to support the mental health and the social emotional side of our education for our students. And so those social workers, we have SEL coaches, we've added more field trip opportunities so students can get that hands-on experience, mentoring programs in schools, and we have every school using an explicit social emotional learning curriculum this year. We've also invested quite a bit in our creating a diverse educator workforce that we can actually retain over time. We have so much going on in this area. We've got a partnership with Winston-Salem State and Salem College and WFU in order to strengthen our teacher pipeline of teachers graduating. We are expanding our teacher cadet program in more high schools, so we're growing our own. We've got teacher residency programs. We've got a partnership with Latino community groups to hire more teachers or more bilingual teachers in our district. We have the Profound Gentleman, which works to help us retain our Black male teachers. So we have a lot going on in the world of talent. And also then the other two are critical as well. The competitive wages and supportive working conditions are also very critical for us to retain our teaching staff. I'm sure you feel the same to retain your staff. We're all dealing with the same challenges, but we have got to have great teachers in every one of our classrooms, and we're focused on that as well. Last but not least, we've provided a lot of resources into our schools. This school year with our ESSER funds, you can see a lot of those positions that are directly in schools supporting our teachers and students. We use a lot of educational jargon, and so that MTSS coordinator on the end there, if you're wondering, what is MTSS? Those are people that actually support students. 80% of the time they're working with small groups of students to support them around tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. So students that are maybe not meeting the mark with or not excelling through the core instruction, they get additional tutoring and supports, and that's what those folks do in school. So we've invested a lot in people. We know in 2 years, ESSER goes away, and so we are right now working on sustainability plans. The great thing about ESSER dollars is they were given to us to kind of front load and aggressively focus on the gap that was created because of the pandemic. So we feel putting all these people now and really providing heavy supports is going to help us, so that we're going to have to start either pulling back or finding other funding sources to continue what's working. We're also analyzing and evaluating everything we're doing to figure out what is it that's working, so we can invest in those areas. So that's it. Wanted to just give you a very quick update. I hope that didn't take too long, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Dr. McManus? A lot of good data there, Doctor. We'll dig into those.
Yep.
And
We'll get you that.
I hope you will come back and do this on a regular basis. Councilman Clark?
Yeah. Are we all back in school now, or is there still any virtual learning?
We are all back except for a virtual academy, and a virtual academy is one of our choice programs, so parents can choose for their children to learn in that way. It has reduced drastically over the years. I think we have what do we have in virtual? About 600? About 600 students, I think, in Virtual Academy. But that, again, it is not an option, it is a way of learning that's kind of like a magnet program. It's a Virtual Academy. But no, everybody else is in school full-time.
Okay, thank you.
And we have to encourage attendance because we're back in school, but we need you in school, everyone. So we're also focused on attendance and making sure our kids come every day.
Good. Thank you again, Dr. McManus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, for being here.
Thank you.
Tonight's agenda of the City Council is comprised of two parts, the general agenda and the consent agenda, and it's always the practice of this council to take the consent agenda as the first order of business. Items on this agenda have been unanimously recommended by a committee of the City Council or are being submitted in accordance with established city procedure. There'll be no discussion of the items on this agenda unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed and considered individually. Items not removed from the consent agenda will be enacted with one motion. We're televising this meeting live tonight on TV 13, and it will be replayed tomorrow at 9 a.m. and again Wednesday at 9 p.m. Of course, copies of our agenda as well as videos of previous meetings are always available online at the city's website by just clicking on the Watch Meetings Online option. Councilmembers, I know that Councilmember Mundy has asked for item C10 and Councilmember Burke has asked for item C13. Are there any other items? I'll take a motion then.
Mr. Mayor,
Move for approval of the balance of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
second.
All right, all those in favor of that motion, please indicate by voting yes, and anyone opposed, vote no. And that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll do item C10.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, let her read it just for a minute. Councilmember Mundy.
Item C10, resolution awarding purchase order for police pursuit vehicles, recommended by Finance Committee.
Councilmember Mundy.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, I don't know that we need a presentation because the item speaks for itself. I was not able to vote on this last week, not being a member of the Finance Committee. But I've got some concerns that we're not going far enough with respect to being eco-friendly. I think what we're suggesting are 45 vehicles that are in fact burning propane, which is better than 100% gasoline. But it feels like we're tiptoeing into a very aggressive goal, and I just don't think it's good enough. We need to be kind of setting the bar for the rest of the community. And right now it feels like we're talking the talk, but we're not walking the walk. So I would actually like to make a substitute motion that we hold this until next month and ask staff to come back to us with an eco-friendly proposal that would include, I don't know what that would look like. It would include hybrid. I know that we're not ready for 100% EVs because there's not the infrastructure, but there may be an opportunity for us to get a couple of those to find out what the pros and cons are. But I just don't feel like in good faith, myself and having heard from a number of constituents, that I'm going to be able to vote for this proposal as it is, or rather for this item as it is.
So Councilmember Mundy makes a substitute motion to hold this item until next month. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Second. All right, is there any discussion on the substitute motion? Councilmember Larson?
Yes, I brought this up in finance as well, because I'm not a member of Finance Committee, but did express some concern at that point about how aggressive we are in our movement toward carbon goals that we're setting for the city. Clearly, our vehicle pollution is a major issue. Petroleum-based, carbon-based petroleum products are a concern. The particular vehicle that we're ordering, the Ford Interceptor, is a new vehicle really for the fleet. We just started using these a couple of years back, replacing the sedan model that we have, and the police force likes it. It seems to be all-terrain, four-wheel drive. It meets a lot of the requirements of a larger vehicle. The nice thing about this particular model is that they do make it in a hybrid. And so what I'd like us to look at is the cost of the hybrid versus the cost of the petroleum-based product, and see if there's a room in there maybe to buy some of these to try to test them out, at least to see how we like them. I hear that the electric vehicles have great acceleration and certainly would meet the requirements of the mileage that we're dealing with day-to-day travel. And so I think it's a possibility that we ought to be exploring more aggressively than we are, and I'm asking the staff I support this motion in the hopes that we will find a way to begin to move the fleet toward a more environmentally responsible fleet. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As I said in the finance meeting, we have to always look at all of the variables. We know the issue with supply chain and logistics and ordering special fleet vehicles right now. It's not like there are lots of them out there, and whenever you can get in line and get yours right now, you need to do that. My other thing is, like I mentioned, was the fact that we can buy hybrid or electric vehicles now, but does the city have the capacity to service those vehicles with the chargers? We know that right now, we don't have that many chargers, and I know I hear from friends that have electric vehicles, and when the car starts to go uphill, it's burning just like a motor, and it's drawing the charge down, and by the time they're praying, they can make it to the next charge station. I'm also concerned that with the amount of crime and calls that we have for police, and particularly the African-American and brown communities and the poor communities, that we need to be able to respond ASAP. We have ShotSpotter, but if we now are going to sit back, even with what happened last night in my ward, 2 young men were killed, shot and killed, that we are discussing as to whether we're going to order police cars. We got police leaving the city in droves all over the country, and I, for one, don't want to give them another reason to leave my city or my community, because right now, we are under siege.
Thank you. Councilmember McIntosh.
Yeah, I want to just pick up on something Mayor Pro Tem said, and the question I have is about the timeliness of this. I know that during COVID and with supply chain issues, we brought a lot less new vehicles in. My sense is that we're at a critical point as far as availability for police cars. We wreck them pretty regularly. And since we have been buying or leasing less of them, we're at a critical point where we need to keep vehicles in service. If that's not the case, I would be in favor of putting this off. If it is the case, then I think we need to vote on this tonight. The things that are available to us as far as straight EV vehicles, you know, the F-150 Lightning Pro SSV, availability is well into 2023 on that. The Chevy Blazer, which is most police forces' preference, that's 2024. The Tesla Model 3, which most departments who have used them don't like, that's a $63,000 vehicle. So, and the Ford Mach-E, Mustang Mach-E, is also a $55,000 to $60,000 vehicle. The decision to me is whether we need to act now to get vehicles to our guys as quickly as possible. I'm for exploring a hybrid version, but again, I think this needs to be done now just from a public safety standpoint.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Clark.
There's a lot more to this than just what makes the engine turn. Police cars are specialized vehicles. And I've been on this council 21 years, and I would say most of the time when we've bought them, there are only 2 or 3 models, cars that are made as police cars. And if you've never been in a police car, and hopefully most of you haven't, particularly in the backseat, these cars are very, very different. And most model cars you can't get with all the features we need. And that's why, as I said, there's usually 2 to 3. We've had the Dodge Charger over time, the Chevy Impala. The best we had was the Crown Vics, but Ford Motor Company stopped making them. So anyway, the list is not every car that's made. The list is every car that is made that meets the police car standards.
Right.
And I suspect that's not more than 4 or 5 cars. And then the question is, are any of those offered in a hybrid or electric manner? And I personally think we should have heard Johnny's presentation before we vote on any of this, but that's...
We're going to vote on the substitute first. Councilmember Scipio had a comment on the substitute motion.
Yeah, just a question to
Go ahead.
Mr. Taylor.
Go ahead.
We are buying vehicles throughout the year. Are we going to be doing replacement vehicles for other departments other than the police this year?
Let me first say good evening,
Mr. Taylor.
Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, other members of the council. yes, we will be purchasing replacement vehicles beyond just this purchase. And I'd like to answer the question, maybe in the reverse order. Councilmember McIntosh asked a question about the availability. The availability is a serious issue. As everyone is well aware, the supply chains are very much disrupted at this time. And so we risk having a long delay before we're able to get these vehicles. Let me go to the first question. Councilmember Mundy talked about how serious the city is to helping our environment. And I would say to you, Councilmember Mundy and other members of the council, that we're very serious about it. In fact, that resolution that was approved by council, that we were heading toward renewable energy by 2050, we have made efforts to move in that direction. And I'll just share a few things with you. We currently have utilized propane as an alternative fuel, and it does impact greenhouse gas emissions. We have about 35 of those vehicles on pickup trucks. We also have biodiesel that we're actually running in about 492 vehicles right now that actually reduce greenhouse emissions. We have 19 hybrid vehicles in our medium-sized fleet. We've got 2 electric vehicles. We've got 2 charging stations and a rolling stock of 1,478 vehicles. 36% of them are using alternative fuel.
That's pretty impressive.
So, are we where we want to be? No. Are we making an effort? Yes. And we have the data to stand behind it.
We have a substitute motion by Councilmember Mundy to hold this item to next month. All those in favor of that motion, which would be to hold this item, please vote yes. All those opposed would vote no. And the substitute motion fails on a vote of 6-2. We're now back to the original motion. I would entertain a motion for item C10.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second to approve item C10. Any discussion? Councilman Clark?
I would like to ask Mr. Taylor if he has anything else he would like to say on this, since he did go to all the trouble to.
Mr. Taylor?
What I will say is that we are prepared to follow the directive of council.
That's good. Smart man. So we do have a motion here to approve item C10. All those in favor of that motion, please indicate by voting yes. Anyone opposed, vote no. And that passes in a vote of 7-1. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Very impressive data, making good progress there. All right, now we go to item C13.
Item C13, resolution authorizing award of contract to Frank L. Bloom, WC Construction Company, a joint venture to provide construction manager and risk services for the Truist Stadium upgrades, recommended by Finance Committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Burke asked for this item to be.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Can we have a brief presentation on the scoring of these contracts?
Mr. Rao, would you cover that, please?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tempore Adams, and members of the City Council. So the item before you tonight is a resolution to award a construction manager at risk contract for the Major League Baseball upgrades project for Truist Stadium. The methodology that staff followed is a methodology that we've employed a number of times for these types of engagements. So there are criteria that we look at when we score the proposals. In this case, it was the minority women business enterprise participation, business location, the approach to the project, work experience, and past performance. And those receive various weights in terms of the scoring. The NWBE and business location each account for 20% of the scoring, so 40% of the scoring is just for those 2 criteria. The city received 2 proposals for this project, one from Frank L. Bloom Construction, WC Construction, which is a joint venture, and then Salmon Construction. When we went through the scoring process with staff, Frank L. Bloom did score higher than Samet Corporation. They receive full points for NWB participation because they do have a joint venture with WC Construction, which will account for 35% of the project. And so based on the overall scoring, the recommendation from staff was to award the contract to Frank L. Bloom Construction, WC Construction.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, for that presentation.
Thank you, and certainly we got two great companies here with Frank L. Bloom and Samet, and I think it should be noted that the Samet Corporation really helped us when this stadium was being built, and it got into financial trouble back in 2008 and 9. They actually carried over $8 million of receivables for over a year, so they were working to make this happen, but can't hire both of them, and it sounds like, Mr. Rao, your rating system was pretty straightforward. Any questions, Mr. Rao, on the rating? All right, thank you. And Councilmember Burke, if you're ready for a motion.
I move for approval of item C13.
Second.
Motion second to approve item C13. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of this item, please vote yes. Anyone opposed, vote no. And that is unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Burke. So we'll now go to the general agenda, which is comprised of the following items. It's an item related to the approval of a sale of city-owned land, an item regarding the adopting recommendations from assessment of the Continuum of Care program, an item related to the acquisition of a lot for future expansion of Fire Station number 14, public comment period, as well as we do need a closed session after the meeting tonight. The public comment period is a time set aside for citizens to voice their opinions on matters that are germane to city government. When this comment period is called, each speaker will be given 3 minutes for their comments, and we'll limit the total comment period to 30 minutes. Ms. Kenny, would you please read the first item, please?
Item G1, resolution approving the sale of city-owned land by private sale to the arts-based school supporting organization. This item was continued from the September 19th, 2022 City Council meeting.
I believe Councilmember Scipio maybe has a motion for this.
Yes, I'd like to move to approve the request of the arts-based school supporting organization to withdraw its request to purchase city-owned land.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second to allow them to withdraw this offer. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of this item would vote yes. Anyone opposed, vote no. And that is unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Scipio. Item G2.
Item G2, resolution adopting the recommendations from an operational and programmatic assessment of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Continuum of Care and authorizing the implementation. Recommended by Community Development Housing General Government Committee with 3 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Adams, this did come from your committee. Do you want a presentation, or are you ready to?
Yes, I think it's important, again, because of how serious the continuum of care process is for our city and every city in the country. And I'd like Ms. Newman to explain how that process works and some of the funding sources that come through to the continuum of care, only because the federal government and the states funnel it through the city.
Ms. Newman, if you would, please.
Good evening, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the council.
Good evening.
Marla Newman, Community Development Director. Tonight we have in front of you an action plan that is the outgrowth of an assessment of our continuum of care, also known as the COC. I'll skip about the organization that did the contract work for us. Just briefly, though, the assessment process consisted of an environmental scan, data gathering, a lot of community engagement from the service providers, from actual individuals who utilize the services that are provided by the COC, as well as other partners in the community. Based on that analysis, they prepared an assessment of the COC, and that assessment was provided to you all in a report and presentation in August. In that assessment, it identified a number of strengths for the COC, and some I'll touch on are the action camp, the fact that long-term members are comfortable reaching out to each other. The organizations that are funded by the COC are engaged. So these were a few of the strengths that were identified. There were also opportunities for growth and improvement and enhancement. And so that's part of what we'll focus on in this presentation. And those areas range from the structure of the COC and how it's led, how we have a need for greater engagement with all of the parties, how people actually enter and move through the system. That's the coordinated entry process. And then where we stand with shelter and the availability of housing for people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness, and then the services that wrap around and support those individuals. And then how do we collect and track and report the data concerning the movements that we make in service provision. So what we have is actually designed to be considered an action plan. And so I'll walk through each of those opportunities that were listed on the previous slide. You'll see here that there are a number of actions that are recommended, but I'll just highlight the primary recommendation and one of the steps that's a part of that. So as it relates to the structure, you see that it mentions about how we should empower the operating cabinet with decision-making and leadership authority and adopt an action-oriented formal committee structure. And so one of the things that is highlighted here is how we talk about revising the role of the operating cabinet to make it the primary decision-making body. So right now, the Commission on Ending Homelessness is serving in that role, but they really should be recast in more of an advisory role rather than in the actual decision-making, because those individuals who are on the operating cabinet know more about the day-to-day functioning of the system of providing services to those experiencing homelessness. And so vesting the primary decision-making in those organizations is a more effective process and actually is one of the best practices that we see in a number of communities around the country. And so this is what the current structure looks like with the Commission on Ending Homelessness. You can see that the commission is appointed by both City Council as well as members of Forsyth County Board of Supervisors. So this is the current setup. You see the City of Winston-Salem at the bottom right, and we are what's considered the collaborative applicant. So we are the ones who make application to HUD for the various sources of funding. Those sources of funding are Continuum of Care. There are also emergency solutions grants, and that's at both the HUD or federal level, as well as the North Carolina Emergency Solutions Grant. So those are two of your primary sources of funding that support services for those experiencing homelessness. We are also able to use Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG dollars, to assist as well. And then at the bottom left of the slide, you'll see that United Way is noted as the coordinated entry operator. And we like to look at United Way as the regional coordinator. So they're the ones who play that point role with the various agencies, making sure that the systems are in place for intake, the assignment of cases to the various agencies and caseworkers and things of that nature. So this is the current structure. What's recommended is that the Commission on Ending Homelessness be more of an advisory group. Currently, the commission consists of about 7 or 8 individuals, and they come from a variety of different disciplines. But moving the actual decision-making to the operating cabinet kind of cuts through a number of layers that the organizations go through. So as an example, when grant funds are available and applications are vetted and scored, they go first to a rating panel, then they go to the operating cabinet, then they go to the Commission on Ending Homelessness, all before we bring it to you to vote. And so we're looking at how do we cut through some of these steps. And so if those come through the operating cabinet, that kind of helps to expedite things. The next recommendation is with regard to leadership. And we received a lot of feedback on being clear about roles and responsibilities for the city staff, the United Way staff, and the various agencies and partners that are involved. And so one of the recommendations I wanted to lift up was the one where it talks about the staff support that's needed for COC activities to make sure that the priorities are moving forward. You know, who's actually kind of being that quarterback to make sure that everything is being coordinated amongst all of the entities and everybody knows what everyone else is doing. So that was another one of the primary recommendations that came out of this, was to make sure we know where the staff support is going. Next was engagement. We, again, received a lot of good feedback. A number of rank and file staff haven't had the opportunity sometimes to really be engaged in some of the training opportunities that are presented. Sometimes it's because of the different shifts that they work, with some of the shelters being open or 24 hours, or some of them just providing services at night. So if you work the night shift, then you're not able necessarily to go to training during the day. And so one of the things that came out was we have to find more opportunities for training for all staff and the opportunity to get them involved and stay abreast of all of the things that are taking place, because sometimes the rank and file staff are the last to know what's going on and able to take advantage of the various opportunities. The Community Intake Center, and that's part of what we call the coordinated entry process. One of the recommendations was that we take a deeper dive at the coordinated entry process. Right now, depending on where someone might seek services, they go through an evaluation process, but then they may have to go to another agency, go through an evaluation process again. And sometimes going through those repeated evaluations can be traumatic. There's a lot of trauma that persons experiencing homelessness encounter. And so sometimes having to be evaluated over and over and over again to determine where to go for services, rather than maybe having a one-stop shop, one evaluation, and then everyone is able to access the information from that evaluation, is another recommendation to streamline and create less stress on the individuals as they are seeking services. And you see it mentions the VSPDAT tool. One of the things we'll look at is whether that is still the best tool for us to use. It can be extremely expensive. Sometimes I think can cost as much as $800 per time it's used. Well, if you look at an individual who goes through that 3 or 4 times, that gets to be quite costly. And so we really want to look at how the coordinated entry system works, and how we can make sure that when someone accesses services, they don't have to ask over and over again and get shifted from agency to agency. Shelter and housing. So, of course, we know that we have a dire shortage of housing, and we especially have a shortage of housing for persons who are chronically homeless and those who are chronically disabled. And so we have individuals sometimes who have a variety of conditions, be it health conditions, cognitive conditions, substance use conditions, that all overlay with their being homeless. And so how do we figure out a way to provide sufficient housing for individuals who need that kind of support? How do we actually get more units into the system that target the special needs of those who are homeless, and especially, again, those who are chronically homeless? So looking at how we revise our policies and set like system performance measures. Some folks are ending up in rapid rehousing who need permanent supportive housing, as an example. So how do we go about identifying the best ways to make sure people are actually funneled to the proper type of housing and the services that they need? And then speaking of services, one of the challenges that we found is that in many instances, before some of the services were delivered to people, they were asked to provide a host of documentation. That creates barriers. One of the things with the Housing First model, which is what we are to be as a community, that's a mandate by HUD, that we are to be low barrier. And we're finding that asking people to have a host of documents, birth certificates, Social Security cards, this, that, and the other, are creating barriers to people actually getting services. So how do we look at streamlining this and moving from a document-ready standpoint to how do we get people in front of services while at the same time we're helping them to get the documents they need for a permanent placement into housing. And then the final area is data. Some of our organizations are tapping into the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. Some are reporting, some aren't reporting. It's difficult for us to really know what completely is going on in the system if everyone isn't at the table utilizing and submitting the data. So looking at creating a data committee as part of the COC. It has a number of working groups as it is. So how do we formalize a data committee so that we can identify, again, what's working with the data system and what isn't working, and how do we bring good data that we can also report to you. We can, of course, report to HUD to show effectiveness over time. So that was the final recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Newman. Any questions, Ms. Newman? Councilmember Scipio.
Ms. Newman, who will see to the implementation of the action plan? Will it be the county, will it be city, or just who or what agency?
It's the COC, actually. So part of what we have noted in the action plan are various roles and responsibilities for the different parties. So with implementation, there'll be aspects that the city implements. There'll be aspects that United Way, as a regional coordinator, would implement. And then there are roles and responsibilities for all of the partner agencies as well. So it's a collective endeavor. But that's another reason, too, why the data is important, so that we can make sure that everybody is actually contributing to the process. We have measures to track that for effectiveness purposes to see how everyone is carrying their weight.
Councilmember Larson had a question, then Councilmember Mundy.
Yes, thank you. This is the same question I guess I was asking in finance. This is a very comprehensive and dense evaluation, and it's like herding cats. And I think they've done an excellent job of pulling together a structure. What I don't see in this report is with the budget. And I know that we're adding staff, we're adding additional survey work to be done. And I guess the question to you is if anybody in planning and anybody in finance has looked at this, what the cost of implementation of this might be.
We are not proposing the addition of staff. Certainly on the city side, we have no plan to add staff, and that's not a part of the recommendation, is that we grow our staff in any way to help perform our part or our role with the implementation.
So the operating cabinet staff that's recommended is within your department currently?
No, sir. The operating cabinet is a host of the various agencies that provide services, from mental health providers, shelters. So it's a collaborative of all of those who provide the services to support the individuals who are experiencing homelessness.
Okay,
so those are direct service providers. We're not, as staff, a part of the operating cabinet.
Could you elaborate a little bit then on the operating cabinet, because I'm a little unclear about, it seems to be the new focal point, the center of the hub, as it were, of this whole program.
Right.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the construction of that and how it operates?
Sure. So the operating cabinet is mandated, first of all, by HUD. They require that we have an operating cabinet. So that's universal across the country. And it is designed for all of those to kind of come together and have a coordinated conversation around how we deliver services. So where we can identify, for instance, a disconnect between rapid rehousing being provided versus permanent supportive housing. Their mission is to come together and help to problem solve. What do we need to do in the system? What do we need to do to make sure that individuals who may have substance issues, that they are appropriately referred to the right agency? So it's almost like a variation of case management on steroids. It's just a super group that looks at systemic items that need to be addressed to make sure that individuals receive the services that they need. And they're all staff of agencies and other entities that provide services. So individual members of the operating cabinet designate staff members from their organizations to be at the table for the operating cabinet. So that's why there's not a need to actually hire new people. It's just making sure that all those who play a role actually come to the table.
How many agencies are currently would be in the operating cabinet?
Currently, we have around 20 agencies. We have noticed that missing from the table are some of our healthcare providers. And so there's a big push to get some of the healthcare providers to the table, as well as some of the other agencies who may address issues such as substance use and behavioral health. So those are some of the areas where we don't have as robust participation as we would need and like. And so I know there is a push to get some more of them to the table as well.
The coordinated entry, CE operation, is that falling within your department then as well?
No, sir. The coordinated entry is managed through United Way.
United Way?
Yes.
So they would staff that and fund that?
They do currently. Well, we provide, again, the pass-through funding, but they are the ones who actually staff the intake center and things of that nature.
So you don't see any additional cost to the city from this? If we accept this recommendation tonight with these specific points, you do not anticipate a specific budget increase from this?
Not at all. No, sir.
Councilmember Mundy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to know if the county's Department of Behavioral Health is part of the continuum.
They are a part. They are a part. Well, let me rephrase that. So we've been working with the health department. And so through the health department, we've had a relationship, but I'm not quite so sure about the behavioral health department.
On the intake center, that is a physical location?
Not yet, and that is one of the recommendations that came out of the assessment, is that there be a physical location. Right now, when individuals need assistance, they have to just call a phone number, and they're dealt with by phone. That's not the highest and best way to engage with people, especially people who are in crisis. And so what we have found in a number of communities, most communities, there is a physical location. And so there is a working group within the COC that is talking about actually creating that, what I call a one-stop center, but that intake center. And we do have one of the agencies that has essentially volunteered to take that on. They're just trying to get their arms around all that will be required and making sure there is sufficient funding for them to take on that responsibility.
And would that depend on the person experiencing homelessness coming to that intake center? And if so, how are we handling the folks who are literally living in the woods who are not seeking services, but we feel like we should try to offer them services?
That's the role of street outreach. So there are individuals whose job it is to go out to the known places where people may be camping or residing, if you will, to offer services. We have access to mobile, what is it called? The integrated health, mobile integrated health. I know I didn't say it correctly, but they actually go out to those locations offering medical assistance and things of that nature. So it's a combination strategy. One, you have a place where you can come, but then there's also teams who go out and offer services. And if individuals are interested in services, then they can help facilitate transportation into either the intake center or directly to a service provider if that person needs those services immediately.
Great job on lowering the barriers. Keep doing that because, like you said, this group of people are dealing with so many issues as it is. I think the easier we can make it for them, the better. And then the last thing I'll say is if there's anything any of us can do to help bring those other health providers to the table in the way of phone calls, letters, emails, let us know, please.
I will. Thank you for the offer.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I'll recognize Mayor Pro Tem Adams came out of your committee for.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I know that was a long to most presentation, but I felt like it was needed. You know, sometimes the presentations that affect the least of us get, you know, no attention. They get passed through. And I think when COVID happened, there was a paradigm shift of how homelessness and the continuum of care and wraparound services are provided. I believe this assessment was much needed because Ms. Newman and those that have worked with the continuum of care and all of the agencies, sometimes we don't change our process until something happens. And at the time, the process that we have been operating under since I've been on the council, I felt like when COVID happened and some others in the community, that there were some missing gaps of how you get the services to the people that need it. How do we know the data? That was real important. There wasn't any data, not sufficient data of what is really happening in the community. So thank you, Ms. Newman. Thank you, Ms. Tony and Community Development and everyone. And again, thank all the agencies that are part of Continuum of Care. I hope they don't take this as the city trying to get in their business, but we have to be transparent and accountable because the Fed and the state money comes to the city, and it's up to us, as many of you know, to vote on it during budget cycles, as well as community development block grants and other things. With that, Mayor, I move for approval of item G2.
Mayor, can I just
Councilmember
make a
McIntosh.
quick comment? Our council members' presence is always welcome at COC meetings, and I highly encourage people to attend. It's eye-opening. It's very educational. The layer of work they do, and it's complex, but it's good to spend some time within those meetings to get a grasp of it.
Some real dedicated individuals running those programs. All right, we do have a motion to approve this item. All those in favor, please indicate by voting yes. Anyone opposed, vote no. And that's what passes. The motion passes 7-1. Councilmember Clark voting no. Thank you, Ms. Newman. Item G3.
Item G3, consideration of items regarding the acquisition of an improved lot located at 5750 Chatelain Drive for the future expansion of neighboring Fire Station Number 14.
I'd recognize Assistant City Manager Tony, please.
Good evening, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and members of the City Council.
Good evening.
Fire Station 14 is located in the North Ward. It's off of Chatelain Drive near University Parkway. It is one of the smallest fire stations and over the years has become one of the busiest. It is landlocked and the adjacent property has become available for sale. That property is located at 5750 Chatelain Drive, right next to Fire Station 14, and would allow for future expansion of that fire station. And so this resolution requests authorization to proceed with the purchase of that property. The property was for sale for $450,000. They are willing to take $425,000, which is lower than the asking price for the conveyance of that property.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. Any questions, Ms. Tony? Now I'm going to recognize the Chairman of the Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Taylor, if he's ready for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. I move for approval of item G3.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please vote yes. Anyone opposed, vote no. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Tony, and so Chief Mayo back there. I'm sure he's happy to see this moving on as well. Item G4.
Item G4, fiscal year 2021-2022 annual report of the Downtown Winston-Salem Business Improvement District.
Oh, let me ask our Deputy Budget Director, Ms. Martin, to tee this item up for us, and then Jason will come up there. Ms. Martin represents the city on the bid, and would.
Good evening, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the City Council. As you all are likely aware, when we created the bid district in downtown, with that as part of the state statute is to provide an annual report to you all. And so Jason Thiel, the president of the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership, is here to provide that to you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Thiel?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, rest of the council members.
Good evening.
Good evening.
State legislation and statutes require that with a business improvement district, or as the state calls it, a municipal service district, that we make a presentation each year. And so that's what we're doing here. I do want to mention that the business improvement district is a special tax assessment to property owners within this green area on the map that should be on your screen. It's the very core of downtown. The bottom is Salem Parkway, or what used to be known as Business 40. The north is basically bounded by Martin Luther King, roughly. It does not include the Innovation Quarter, and it goes to Broad Street on the west, avoiding the Holly Avenue residential neighborhood. One of the things that I will share with you is that we work very hard with the Business Improvement District to provide supplemental services that are above and beyond what the city provides. We're grateful for the services that are provided, but for instance, if we have a property that's within the bid district and somebody has graffiti on their property that they do not want, we will come and clean it up. There are additional sanitation and janitorial services that are provided each day. Oftentimes you'll see our contracted teams working on with orange shirts, and they enjoy their job. They enjoy providing directions, talking to people, and being the eyes and ears of our downtown. They start work early, and they work very hard. They pick up a lot of trash. It's hard to believe how much trash they pick up just in pounds on a daily basis and annually. But they're involved in many different things like billy coat, which is very big right now with leaf collection, as it is probably in your yard, and many other variables. But in the interest of time, I would say that the advisory committee members on this are all appointed by way of their association or by way of a representative entity, such as a hotel operator, a resident, several other groups. And we meet, and I want to thank Meredith for her hard work, but the Business Improvement District is something that we work very hard on, and I maybe we'll just leave my presentation there for you to answer any questions if there are any.
It's important to note that this business district was created by a vote of the property owners there to agree to accept an additional assessment on their taxes.
Mr. Mayor.
Is that correct?
Yeah, no, yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Clark.
I continue to get calls on parking tickets. One last week was a person who got a $120 bill. I strongly recommend that you get with your folks and work this problem. The punishment should fit the crime, and it doesn't. A $120 fee for either forgetting or not doing it correctly, and that gets to one of my complaints is how difficult it is to actually get the ticket.
Yes.
The parking ticket so you don't get fined. I'll be happy to address your organization, but I've got some ideas on how to work this, but you're not going to like them. But you got to stop mistreating the citizens of Winston-Salem the way you're doing it.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay. Well, you know, I think it's important to make sure people understand what's going on here and who's doing what. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to do that just in a very direct way, but the parking tickets that people are receiving are not coming from the city, and they're not coming from the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. They're coming from private property owners who contract with private parking companies.
Sir, I know who they're coming from, but they're these people in the green.
Okay.
And these,
right.
you heard a few claps out there. You're making enemies of the folks in my ward because they're sick and tired of getting a $100 ticket because they couldn't figure out how to take a picture of their license plate and email it to some email address. The system is designed to catch folks and get them penalized, and I don't like it, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But if you want to make a war out of this with the councilman of the West Ward, bring it on.
I don't think Jason's necessarily being the war. He's sort of in the middle on this one, and we know the city attorney's looked at this
I would
hard.
actually like to answer that.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah. Sir, I would welcome an opportunity to talk about this further and see what actions the city council can take. I get probably more calls than you do.
You probably do.
And you know, my answer to them, I got one while I was sitting here waiting. There's nothing any of us can do. I would do anything that you guys would be willing to consider. Don't consider me the enemy.
I don't.
Okay.
But I don't shop or go to restaurants downtown anymore because I'm tired of it.
Well, I will say one thing. There's a lot of discussion, and we've talked about bringing it to Public Works as a discussion item. I think that'd be good.
Mr. Bunny, do you have a question regarding the bid report?
Actually, just a question to follow up on this. I think a lot of the folks in green are business operators as opposed to property owners, and I think it's the property owners who are agreeing to this. And if that's not accurate, let us know. But I think we might be penalizing the wrong people if we're going to business operators versus property owners.
Mayor, I will say that Councilmember Scipio chaired a meeting of concerned citizens and business owners. We are going to be bringing this up at Public Works. It's a discussion that's been going on for a long time. There's not an easy fix for City Council. There's not a fix for the Downtown Partnership. They do not control any of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I personally have asked the city attorney who's looked at it very hard there. Mr. Steele, thank you, and we thank the members of the bid committee for their hard work.
Thank you, Jason.
We'll now go to the public comment period, which is a time once per month that the city council invites citizens to address it on matters that are germane to city government. Again, we'd ask that you state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we will have a total of 30 minutes for the public comment. First person signed up is Joanne Allen.
Good evening, Joanne Allen, P.O. Box 284, 27102. Senate Bill 473, Transparency and Accountability by Elected Officials. When you vote for our tax dollars to be given to your friends and business associates, nonprofits, the least you can do is recuse yourself from the vote as an elected official, especially when the majority of you receive campaign contributions and are closely associated with those same individuals, such as Mr. Don Flo, Mr. Nathan Hatch, Mr. Bob Leake, Mr. Hank Perkins, Mr. Drew Gershmeyer, Mr. Steve Berlin, Mr. Nigel Alston, Mr. Andrew Hancock, and many others. I have requested that there be several state investigations from the North Carolina State Treasurer, Mr. Dale Falwell, and from the State Auditor, Ms. Beth Wood, as well as by the Federal Bureau of Investigations. It's time for the people of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, to understand the magnitude of cronyism and corruption in this city and this county. Every last one of you were elected or put in office to represent the will of the people and not your own personal agendas. You weren't put in office to get wealthy off of your title. Oh, what a web we weave when we first practice to deceive. Seeing that I have 1 minute and 18 seconds left on the clock, let me just say this. I don't have a problem with nonprofit organizations. I don't have a problem when the city or the state give money to nonprofit organizations. But what I do have a problem with is when there is no way to measure the effectiveness of what they do, especially when it comes to our tax dollars. We give and give and give, but there's never a real return. Here we are still talking about the homeless and poverty, and my goodness, we're right back where we started 12, 13 years ago when I first started coming before you all. We got to do better than this, and the only way we can do better, unfortunately, everybody needs to be removed up here. Everybody. Either you've been here too long, or you just haven't been effective. And that's the problem. And we know this because we live out here in the community and we hear what's being said. Thank you.
Patricia Caldwell. Patricia Caldwell.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Caldwell. I live at 612 West 23rd Street. I live in the Boston Thurman area. That is the area off of Thurman. I would like to thank the council for the proposal that was submitted for the Boston Thurman neighborhood. Also, the Boston Thurman neighborhood is a purpose-built community, has been since May 2019. The citizens, the residents, and the staff are working closely with the residents for revitalization of our neighborhood. I am so excited, the rest of us are excited about the potential of the revitalization and what these funds would bring to our community. So, as a lifelong resident, I'm happy for my community, I'm happy for my residents, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Robin Stone. Robin Stone.
She left, Mayor.
She left, okay. Rajesh. I'll let you pronounce your last name, Rajesh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Joins, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Rajesh Kapleshwari. I live at 447 Dartmouth Road. I'm here as a concerned citizen and an engineer who's been working on emissions reduction for the last 25 years. I sit on the sustainability committee, but I'm not here on their behalf today. In fact, my committee was kind of caught unaware about the gas vehicles that you're purchasing. And you're right that the city did pass a very aggressive resolution 2 years ago, and this was our perfect opportunity because anything we do today, any car you buy today is going to affect us 10 to 15 years. The impact is going to be for 10 to 15 years, so that's why it was important. Going forward, perhaps we can exercise due diligence, evaluate all these EV options, hybrid options, and strongly consider emissions as a part of your decision matrix when you make a decision. The advantages of EVs are outweigh the disadvantages. For example, the direct benefits, fewer emissions, lower fuel cost, almost no maintenance because there are fewer moving parts, and 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. I mean, that is, anybody would love it. Indirect benefits, lower air pollution, particulate matter reduction, that's the 2.5 micrometer things that directly contribute to morbidity and mortality of disadvantaged people and vulnerable populations. Lower rates of asthma, lower healthcare cost, and I can go on. And there are challenges, of course. We need charging stations. We do have supply chain issues, not just for EV cars, but for all cars. But there are 6 models available right now. And we do have grants available from the federal government to offset the cost. Police department cars are a special thing on its own. But not all cars have to be the pursuit cars. Some are surveillance cars, CSI cars, and they could have been EV. Imagine the savings when the cars are just idling there and not using gas, they're using the batteries. And one thing I was kind of struck by is we don't have to go all in, 100% gas cars or 100% EVs. A reasonable option would have been to purchase a few EVs, evaluate them over time, and then decide. And we are not the first ones. There are 6 police departments that I can list right now. You know, the App State, the Capital State, Town of Cary, they're already NYPD, the ICE, Immigration and Customs. So they're all using EVs. And one thing is delaying buying cars, EV cars, is actually beneficial to us because there are a lot of grants available right now from Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act. So this is inevitable, and the sooner the better.
Thank you.
We have to stand for our value and beliefs at some point.
Thank you. And thank you for your service on our Sustainability Committee. We appreciate that. Gail Goldsmith.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for letting me speak. And thank you, Mr. Mundy, for putting the motion out there to give this a little bit more time. I want to tell you a little bit about myself because you probably don't know, really, some of you know who I am, and some of you have seen me around in the environmental world. I don't see myself as crazy environmentalist, but I want you to know that I've been involved in environmental issues since 1978. I got my master's in environmental science from one of the first environmental science programs, master's programs in the country back in the 80s. I got my law degree that same decade. I've been on a lot of different environmental boards, the City of Cincinnati Environmental Advisory Council, which was where J. Nelson Weaver and I came before you, Mayor Joines, to say, I think we need an Environmental Advisory Council, which ended up being the Sustainability Board. I've been on the Piedmont Environmental Alliance Board. I was the chair on the Yadkin Riverkeeper Board. I am now the chair of the North Carolina Climate Solutions Coalition. I ended up getting my Master in Environmental Law from Vermont Law School, where I graduated summa cum laude in 2015. This topic is important. I learned about climate change in 1982, so it's really near and dear to my heart. So we're talking about the purchase of the police vehicles. I'm going to just give you a couple of things that I wrote down today when I realized that this was going on. First of all, I've got a Tesla. Love it. I mean, I know there are some people, maybe one of the police officers that said, terrible car. These cars are great. I could kick, excuse my language, ass against a police officer in driving that car if I needed to, run away. But I never would do that, of course. But those cars are really fast. And if you're talking about a chase car, perfect. The cars get 300 miles per charge. You can charge them up overnight. Cost me $150 to get a charger in my garage that's a 240. I'm in the process right now. In fact, it's so good. And I've had this car, the Tesla, since 2018. And I see that I'm running out of time. There's no oil changes, filters, or any other kind of liquids. There's hardly any money that you have to spend to keep these cars running. I actually save about $150 a minimum a month on my gas bills. I've got 92,000 miles on my car, and it's going to keep on going for years to come. I'm getting a Bolt next month because my daughter, who drives the Leaf, only gets 100 miles per charge, and I think it's time that I let her go a little bit further. So it's a $31,000 car. The detectives, others can use that.
Your time is up. I'm sorry.
I got it. But thank you, and I've got a lot more I could tell you if anybody wants to listen
We'll
to
hear
me.
it. Okay, thank you for your service there. Matthew Myers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Pro Tem, and all the council members. My name is Matthew Mayers. I live at 2844 Wesleyan Lane. I'm also here to talk about the police car issue. Not too long ago, I was at an event with Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and she said something that I thought was beautiful and inspiring. She said, roughly, I'll paraphrase you if that's okay, that every decision the city makes is taken through a lens of environmental sustainability. And I really thought that's a lovely thing to say, and it's a very aspirational thing to say for the city. Tonight, I'm pretty disappointed and a little embarrassed about what happened here. There's business as usual, and there's business that we ought to do. And what I saw tonight was a lot of, not all minor objections, but a lot of objections that are things that have to be worked through. They're not reasons to say, ugh, put on the brakes, do what we know how to do business as usual. There's solutions to all of these problems. As I think Rajesh mentioned, a great solution would have been, let's get a few EVs or something similar, try to work out the kinks, figure out what works and what doesn't work. It's a $1.6 million budget item. There wasn't a penny in there for an EV or a hybrid. That doesn't sound quite right, sitting in the gallery anyway. It feels like we do what we know, we do business as usual. If we have to think too hard about what the real solutions are, nah. We're not going to do that. And with all due respect to Johnny Taylor, you know, the supply chain issues, well, that's something we've known about for 2.5 years. The charger issues, that's something we've known about for 2.5 years. All of these issues have been coming down the pike for a long time, and I know, and all of you know, and the city manager's office knows that you have to buy cars every now and then, and you need to think about it in advance. And I really do hope that going forward, these large purchases, not just of police vehicles, but of other fleet vehicles for the city, will take that into consideration much more strongly. I was shocked to learn that members of the Sustainability Commission didn't know this was coming. $1.6 million in gas-powered vehicles, and the Sustainability Commission didn't know that was being voted on. So I'll stop soon, but I do want to say, with all due respect to you, sir, Mr. Mayor, also, the things that Mr. Taylor mentioned as the great accomplishments in the way of the fleet of the city, they're almost impressive. They would have been impressive 15 years ago. Those are not the solutions of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Arnita Miles.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, City Council members.
Good evening.
East Ward. I live Arnita Miles, 494 Smithdale Street, East Ward. Councilmember Scipio, good evening. I am here to speak to you about a follow-up to G2. Since 2018, the city of Winston-Salem has funded over $8 billion to address homelessness. The COC is the leading agency for homelessness in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. I submit to you, there's a problem with the 2018 strategic plan, that it was written in 2018, and it is the abiding bylaws that the city of Winston-Salem and the COC goes by today. In 2013, this book will be published, Understanding Homelessness in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County by Dr. Arnita Miles. I submit to you, if the federal government was to come into Winston-Salem this week or next week, our reporting is flawed. The COC, the point of time counts were flawed. They didn't report totally in 2020 because of COVID. The numbers are wrong. Our homeless here in Winston-Salem, because I am a member, a person who goes boots on the ground, they need low-income housing. They need substance abuse programs. They need mental health programs, and they need jobs. If an affordable housing shortage is there for people who make medium incomes, where are our homeless supposed to live? The COC does not address that. They fund programs, it's full of cronyism and favoritism, but it doesn't give money to the homeless. 70%, and I can show any one of you the data, because I have it. 70% of that $8 million went to administrative costs. Less than 20% went to the homeless in this community. I thank Mayor Joynes for his interview, because he will be in my book. I interviewed him. I thank Assistant Manager Tony for providing the data. Over $8 million since 2018, and we have over 500 people that are homeless every night on the streets of Winston-Salem. If you want to see the errors in the data, I can show them to you. I can show them to you tonight. It's flawed.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Hirsch.
Good evening. I'm Sally Hirsch, 1831 Brantley Street, Ardmore, Winston-Salem. Good evening, Mayor Joynes, Pro Tem Adams, and council members. And I'm here also to speak about all of these different issues, which I see all connected, because I have an EV and I plug it into my home, 220 volt. It took about $200 to install that on my house, and I paid $12,000 for my EV. I can really go fast in that thing. It's a Leaf. Now they're making them so much better. I was the one, yes, I am a troublemaker, Councilmember Clark. I was the one that listened to the Finance Committee, heard you speak, Councilmember Larson, and told the people about the fact that you were moving on this, and they had no idea. So I said, well, please get down here and make some noise. I'm concerned about the diesel, biodiesel. Why are we growing plants for biodiesel when we need to feed people? HOPE, Help Our People Eat, I believe, put in a grant for ARPA that was denied. So, we're making choices here that just don't seem quite right. Biodiesel creates fumes. Homeless people are breathing in those fumes out there. We're inside of our houses. We don't have to breathe them, but people out there do. I don't know what else to tell you. I studied this some for a couple of days and saw that there were about 25 EV charging stations across this county, none of them on the east side. No, I think there was one on the east side. So we're making choices all the time and leaving people in the dark. Why is that all these years? I don't understand it. But there has to be some accountability, some transparency. People have to, talk. I hear you. You lost 2 people in your ward. And that's just awful. That's just awful. And why are there no charging stations in your ward? All these years. I only spent $200 and a couple hours of time to get mine. Why can't the city do something like that for the East Ward? I just don't get it. Costs of cars are coming down. I spent $12,000 for my Leaf. Of course, it was used. Nobody wanted them. That was quite a few years ago. But look, the prices are coming down. It's time to start acting on sustainability. Thank you, Mr. Larson, for bringing it up. Thank you.
Thank you. I would point out that one item on the agenda tonight adds 3 charging stations, 2 of which are in the East Winston community. Anyone else would like to be heard tonight? We have a couple minutes left.
Eunice Campbell, 5743 Antietam Drive. Good afternoon, Mayor Joins, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and City Council. If you're digging a hole in the wrong place, making it deeper doesn't help anything. Today, we're in a aquaponic job training facility hole. Per the Winston-Salem Journal, it is arguably the worst investment in city history. There were weather issues, there were supplier issues, there were COVID issues, quoted Mayor Pro Tem Adams. All issues except for it was just a bad decision. It was a poor choice for our taxpayers' money, our bond money at that. So, what I mean by bad decision, less than $1 million, $900,000 has now turned into $1.9 million. 1.8 has already been spent. It hasn't even been in front of the City Council since January 2021, where it was $900,000 and you all agreed to put another $500,000 into it. Now, where the other $400,000 was discussed and agreed upon, we the public do not know. No transparency, no accountability of the original budget, what happened to the lease, when did Goler step out? These are the type of things that, after spending $2 million, I think you need to report to the citizens of this county who voted bond money, not regular just tax money, but this is bond money from 2014. So to make things even more concerning to me, here we are, We have a hydroponics farm. What happened to the aquaponics part? I was told that we don't have the equipment for the aquaponics. Well, why not? It was budgeted. So I go to the event Saturday. It's only half equipped. Why not? It was budgeted to equip the whole thing. So after $1.8 million, the worst part of it is there is no plan for it. Not any plan on sustainability, what we're going to grow, how to sell it, what to sell it for, where to sell it, how much to produce, the profit margin, no idea who can manage it, nothing. Where's the money to pay for this coming from? Is it city budget? Will it be on the next budget? Just these type of questions. An update on this would really, truly be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Have time for one more speaker.
Gali Hassan, 5116 Britt Road. Thank you, Mayor, and Mayor Pro Tem, to the council for hearing me, the last one. We have a serious problem here. I have to join in with what Ms. Joanne Allen said about the corruption in this city. I sent each of you an email. I don't know if you received it or not. And if you did, you will understand why I'm here tonight. And number one reason being that we have a contractor who is submitting invoices and being paid for work he hasn't done. Thousands of dollars. This is an illegal contract from the beginning because every affidavit in the contract is falsified. Just for the audience, give you a quick overview. We submitted a bid for $45,000. It was kicked out, said it was too high. Then you accept a bid for the same work for $309,600. And I like, you could have knocked me over with a feather, and I asked why, how did this happen? And it was told to me, but we made them negotiate down. I said, to what? $226,000. Now, we won a contract around the same time for the same scope of work. Our unit cost is $16,000. His contract is over $250,000 for the same work. Now, my question tonight, will this council support this illegal contract, understanding that he's not just robbing me, but he's robbing the whole county? And if any and all of you can support that contract, I want to say it publicly tonight that that's what you support, versus the contract that we have legally, and we're being discriminated against because we exposed this, and you won't let me work or my wife's company work. So in the retaliation and discrimination has to stop. It has to stop now, and you need to tear that contract up with Dalton Contracting and make him pay back every dollar that he has gotten so far. And in the meantime, we need to go to work.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. I'll end the public comment period. Council members, as you know, we do have a need to go into closed session. I recognize Councilmember Clark for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Winston-Salem City Council go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A4 regarding the location of a business within the corporate limits of the city of Winston-Salem.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of going into closed session, please indicate by voting yes. Anyone opposed, vote no. Oops.
Was it supposed to come up
It's
or
not
something?
There it is.
Okay.
It's unanimous to go in closed session. we'll excuse the members of the audience. aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. We are adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.